Welcome to Practice Diary. So this week I'm thinking about chord tones and how to approach using them in a jazz solo. So just say you're using a particular scale or mode as part of your jazz solo. I think it's really important to be aware of where the strong chord tones land within that scale in order to be able to feature them in your solo. So let's take an example like the altered scale. Now I did a video about the altered scale last year, so feel free to check that out. Now the altered scale is quite a complex sounding scale with a lot of outside notes in it. It's usually played on dominant seventh chords, so C7 for example. So here's how a C altered scale would sound on a C7 chord. So what are the chord tones in that altered scale? Well, if it's a C7 chord, you've got your root note C, the third E, and the seventh B flat. So just those three notes. So just being aware of where those three notes are within the scale. So you've got C, root, E, B flat, C, E, B flat, C. So if I'm aware of where those chord tones fall within that scale, I can create lines that start and finish on strong chord tones. So let me give you an example. Let's play a line that starts and finishes on the root note C. So I could do something like this. Or I could just add an extra note and have the line land on the seventh. So I could start on the root, end on the seventh. Now I have to say, I think it's the note that you land on, which is probably the most important note. That's the one that has the maximum impact with the listener. So that last note of a phrase is the one that's going to really, that's the one that's going to stick in people's minds most. Now, if I was going to end a phrase that landed on an altered note, say a flat 9 for example, it would sound something like this. Now that's quite an uncomfortable note to land on. Now you might want to use that kind of slight discomfort as part of your solo. So there's no right or wrong answers here. It's when you're improvising you can play whatever you want, but it's important to understand the effect that landing on a note like that will have to the listener. So another approach would be to resolve that onto the nearest chord tone. So if I, instead of doing this, I do this. And it helps to make sense of that line. So another example would be if I landed a line on the sharp 9, it would sound like this. So basically the same line but landing on the sharp 9. And then I could resolve that to the major third. It would sound like this. Okay? So there's no right or wrong answers here. It's all just about what kind of effect you want to create. But I think it's really important to understand how each note from your scale or mode is going to feel when you play it compared to the chord. And coming up with lines that resolve themselves onto those strong chord tones is always a strong way to play a jazz solo.